Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Joey, and today we're going to take a quick look at the MagicX Zero 40. The number one selling feature of this handheld is going to be the screen. It is a 4-inch 480 by 800 portrait display, and it makes it unique in the market because it's something that is specifically for Nintendo DS and Tate mode arcade games. Is that how you say it? Tate mode, tape mode, whatever, vertical arcade games. We're going to go with that because they can actually take advantage of those. So taking a quick look at this new device, starting at the top, and we have inline shoulders and triggers, and they are in a nice spot ergonomically. There is a DC charging port as well as an OTG port, and you would use this OTG port to connect to your PC to transfer files over and such, and things like that. It's very easy to just transfer files over with a USB-C to C cable. Then we have a normal headphone jack. On the left, we have our volume buttons, and on the right, we have our 2 SD card slots and the power button. Now, this is running Android 10, and despite what you're likely used to with Android devices, the operating system here is actually on the first SD card. There is no internal eMMC storage, so the Android operating system actually lives on the SD card. It is also why that OTG port makes a lot of sense, because to access the actual Android files, you need to connect it through that port or use wireless FTP and things like that. You can't take out that SD card and pop it in your PC and then access the files on the Android device. You have to use the cable or a wireless solution if you want to. But the second card can be a ROM SD card or whatever you want it to be for storage. Now on the front, we have the D-pad and buttons, both of which are fairly silent and not loud. There's decent travel on the buttons and they feel pretty good to use. I would have liked to see a larger D-pad and buttons here, since they do have the space for it, but it is a tiny nitpick. The buttons can be on a bit of a smaller end than I'm used to. Then we have a non-switch stick here, which is nice to see, and it feels good to use. It reminds me of Retroid style sticks. Lastly, we have nice front-firing speakers, which is always great to see, especially at this price point. Now, ergonomically, I have to say this is actually really well done. Everything feels good to use, all of the buttons are in the right spot. You don't feel like you're reaching with any fingers to hit any of the buttons. It all just contours right to your hands, and it feels very nice. They got that down properly. It is a nice, comfortable handheld in that way. It's also extremely light. It doesn't feel heavy at all. The weight is distributed nicely throughout the entire handheld. It is a big, blocky sort of design. So nothing special here design-wise, but they nailed it. They nailed what they were going for here. It is better than you would expect when you look at it in pictures. It is comfortable, it is not heavy, and it feels good to use. Now, when we look at the overall specs of the MagicX Zero 40, this is using the all-winner A133P processor that you are probably familiar with at this point, because it's been on the TrimUI Smart Pro, it's been on the TrimUI Brick, and it's even on MagicX's last handheld, the Mini 028. We'll talk about performance in a bit. Now on the screen end, it is a 4-inch 480 by 800 IPS display. It is touchscreen, which is great. And it is a bit weird for a lot of systems, but again, it does go back to this being sort of a niche product for Nintendo DS and vertical arcade. We have 2 GB of RAM, which helps with Android, 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4.2, Rumble support, and a 4300 mAh battery, which is awesome. There is no video out support, so just be aware of that. Taking a quick tour, and the first thing you're going to notice is MagicX has their own launcher called the Dawn Launcher, and it takes inspiration from Daijisho, and they have a customized experience here with how the screen is laid out. It's actually really cool what they've done. The box art is at the top, and then the game list is on the bottom, and I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Dawn Launcher. They have done a lot of great work with the MagicX Mini 028, and they're continuing it here with the Zero 40. They're actually putting in the effort when it comes to launchers and making Android work with weird displays. Now, you can change settings on a per system basis, like the CPU mode, to change from power saving to balanced or performance. You can set which emulator or core to use for that system. You can change any overlays if you have them installed, and you can even enable integer scaling all from outside of the game. You get the same sort of options on a per game basis as well, and even the added option of deleting a game directly from the launcher. There is a built-in scraper for box art, and that grabs it directly from screenscraper.fr, which again is similar to what Daijisho has too. Heading over to settings, and there's a lot more that you can do with Dawn. There's a game switcher function that, for anybody familiar with Onion OS and how their game switcher works, it's pretty much the exact same way here. So you just push and hold the G button to pop out of a game, move over to one of the recent games that you played, and load into that. And if you turn on auto save and load in Dawn settings, you can have it load right to your save state if you want to. There is a global performance toggle, again similar to what we saw before with performance and balanced and all of that. And they do make it super easy to add your games with a blank SD card, because the software will create all of the folders that you need just through their menu. There's an FTP service, which again we talked about before. You're going to want to use wireless or wired connections to access all of your files, so they have that built in. And there's even over-the-air updates for Dawn Launcher. Now, this is running Android, so you can just head into Android settings or swipe down, and you can access a whole bunch more if you need to. Anybody familiar enough with Android knows what to expect here. The Google Play Store is not installed by default, but you can sideload it or put on the Aurora Store if you want, or whatever option you want. I want to jump into some games, and I thought I'd give you a quick look at how Android games will play on here. And so I decided to boot up Vampire Survivors, and I wanted to see how well it would play on this processor, for one, and with the display. Surprisingly, to me, it plays super well, and it actually looks really well on the display too. So I thought that was interesting. I don't expect that a lot of Android games will work well on this display. Although it is a portrait display, so it works with most phones. It's just a lot smaller, I guess. It'll be up to you to try. The processor is probably going to be the limiting point on this. It's A133p, not super powerful for Android games for a lot of them, but hey, at least Vampire Survivors works. But now let's go ahead and look at some emulation, because that's probably what you're going to buy this for. And starting off with Game Boy and Game Boy Color, this has no problem running those games, of course, but I was curious to see how it looks on this display and how it handles it. Now, you can move the actual screen part up and down in the RetroArch settings, so if you want to put this center on the display, you can do so. But overall, Game Boy is about 2.8 inches at a 3x upscale, which basically means you are getting a perfect scale here on this screen with Game Boy. It's just maybe a bit smaller than most people want. Game Boy Advance is surprisingly similar. It is a bit smaller at a 2.5 inch overall area covered, but it is an exact 2x scale, which once again is a perfect scale, so no need for integer scaling, it's already there. This is kind of on the small side for Game Boy Advance, I think, but I mean, if you want to play it, you can play it. Then I just wanted to check out some 4x3 content just to see what we have to work with, and with Super Nintendo, I think the play here would be 8:7 aspect ratio as opposed to a 4:3, and you can change that easily in RetroArch's settings, and that gives you a lot more screen to work with, and I think it looks pretty good. I think with probably each of these systems, an overlay would probably help your experience quite a bit, and I fully expect that the community will have an overlay pack at some point pretty quickly after launch. Somebody will make it, and then it'll be passed around, so that's probably your best bet. If you don't like all those black bars up and top or bottom, just wait for an overlay pack. But alright, let's get over to the good stuff here with Nintendo DS. And we have a lot to talk about here. By default, the 040 uses Drastic as the default DS emulator. And as you can imagine, Drastic runs on anything, and it runs well here as expected. Now the screens are separated nicely with an overlay in between them, because DS doesn't scale perfectly on this screen. It is not an exact combination, so you have to have that overlay, otherwise you'll have a black bar in between the two. I jumped right into Kirby's Canvas Curse and was able to use my stylus on the touchscreen, and it all worked perfectly. It was actually a really nice experience because you can just one-hand it, use the stylus in the other, and it was just kind of like using a tablet, or a small tablet. It felt nice to use. But I mean, overall, the screen works perfectly with Drastic. There's no issues or concerns on my part. You get a nice look at DS games, and it's basically exactly what the device is made for. But there is a bit of a caveat here. You might be wondering, what about other DS emulators, like MelonDS Standalone, the MelonDS Core, or the other MelonDS DS Core? And that's where things get a little bit more muddy. Look, I love retro achievements, and Drastic doesn't support them, unfortunately, but the other emulators do. And so the first thing that I want to check out was how well do the other emulators that have retro achievement support work with this processor and everything. And the unfortunate part is, even at the performance CPU mode, they don't. So I tried the MelonDS Core, I tried the MelonDS DS Core, and I tried MelonDS Standalone. And in each scenario, I couldn't get games to run full speed, which essentially means this is a Drastic only device. Now, for many of you, that's not going to be an issue because you're probably fine with Drastic. For the small subset of people like myself that want retro achievements, it is unfortunate. But this is a very good DS experience, including with Drastic. The games run well, the screens are good enough size to use the stylus with as well, and you can have a lot of fun playing DS games on here. Then we have the vertical mode arcade games, which is the second reason that you would want to buy one of these. And I tested out a few of those games, and just fair warning, I have no real knowledge of vertical arcade games. It's not something that I've looked into in the past. It's not something that I play with. But I did check out a few games like 1942 and Dodonpachi, you know what I'm talking about, Donpachi, let's go with that one. And so all those seem to run and play super well here, and vertically with a small overlay at the bottom. Honestly, Donpachi, we're going to go with that, is actually pretty fun. I'm going to have to play that a little bit more because I've never really played it and I've never looked at it before, but I was enjoying it as I was playing it for today's video. Now, if you're curious about battery life, I did a very quick test of Nintendo DS and I got a nice 8 hours of battery on a charge. Well, it was like 7 hours and 46 minutes, but we're rounding up to 8 hours because that extra 14 doesn't matter. So 8 hours on a 4300 milliamp hour battery, which is really good. Anyways, let's do a quick wrap up here with my overall thoughts. I think overall, this is a very interesting device, but it is more on the niche end here. You're mostly going to buy this for Nintendo DS or vertical arcade games. I don't see many people buying this for a Game Boy experience, Game Boy Advance, Super Nintendo, all of that. Although you can play that on here, as I showed today. With overlays, it'll probably look a little bit nicer. I think the niche part of this is DS and vertical arcade, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want one of those, we don't have a lot of devices like that. This is a very unique part of the market where they are specifically focusing on a portrait display that can play games that run well with a portrait display. So it's cool. It's something that's new. It's something that's different. And I like seeing this from MagicX because they are doing a bit different things here. Not all of them will hit. Not all of them will be great, but I think so far the Mini 028 and this one are definite hits in different aspects. I don't really have any major negatives either. The D-pad and buttons probably could have been bigger, but that's a common complaint that I have with a lot of handhelds. Using the Switch 2 Pro controller and how big everything is, I would love to see that on more handhelds if we could do that. But either way, I think overall, what you would expect here is what you're getting. The A133 processor does get a little bit warm. You can feel the device getting a bit warm, but it's not crazy. It doesn't feel like it does on the Brick, for example. It feels a lot more managed here. The power of it is going to be Drastic for DS, and vertical arcade games all play well. You know what you're getting here for the most part. It's just in a different form factor. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Is this something that you're interested in? Is DS on your radar? Or were you hoping for DS with retro achievements? Because I know there's a lot of you that watch me that do the same thing I do. Otherwise, is this something you're going to grab? I want to know in the comments. It's a bit of a niche product, but I'm wondering what the market is like for something like this, because it's a bit different, it's a bit new, and it's pretty interesting in my opinion. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to talk all about handhelds like this one. Support me on Patreon if you like my stuff. And hope you all have a good one.